Good morning, everyone. We're going to be starting soon.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us here. Yes, we're ready to start.
Good morning, everyone. We will get started with a few housekeeping items. This meeting is being live streamed today. There will be an opportunity for questions after each presentation. Representatives from local, state, and tribal partners will have an opportunity to provide updates during the agenda item number 11. We will take public comment from those who are in person. And then thank you all for today's forum. And Drew, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Yvette. Welcome, everybody, here in person and online to the Resiliency Forum, this quarter's Resiliency Forum. It's good to see familiar faces around the table. As we finish up our resiliency plan for the South Florida Water Management District, and that's getting posted and coming in for a landing, as I was driving in, I was reflecting on the word resiliency and what it means. And I think all of us in resiliency have realized that almost everything fits into that box, right? It is kind of a bread and butter word for a lot of things we do. But for us, it really comes down to the water side of resiliency and water management. And when you get granular with it, it's flood control and water supply. And I would say 100% of our capital investments these days are in those two buckets. If it's Everglades restoration, it fits in really well with water supply because you're not losing it to the coast, you're keeping it in the system, and you have it for your environment, which feeds water supply, right? And then it also folds in with flood control. And on our flood control system, it was built in the 50s and 60s, so it is coming of age. And so that is a resiliency challenge for the Water Management District from hey, we need to rebuild this thing and we need to adapt it to sea level rise and the changed water management systems in our region. And so it's a big lean that we have to do. And one of the things that we did to organize ourselves on that is we did a reorganization within the Water Management District to bring the planning for flood control and the planning for water supply into one organization because of it's interconnected, right? When you're doing flood control activities, you don't have a water supply problem, but you do those activities in such a manner that it prepares you for a water supply problem. So that's kind of how it can all fit together. And so when you're dealing with saltwater intrusion or dumping water unnecessarily to your coastlines, if you can marry those two together, that's it. And so that's a new division. It's a flood control and water supply planning division. Dr. Moran is the division director for that division at the South Florida Water Management District. And you've seen what she brings to the whole planning effort through her resiliency lens. But now that lens grow. And so she may be a little more stressed, but I'm very confident that she can handle that. But I wanted to let you know that that's how we're looking at it from a water management division lens. And, it's a perfect time to have a forum as we enter the peak of hurricane season. But I can tell you the most the anxiety I'm feeling is on the water supply side because right now we are not full. We've got room to be full for the dry season, and the weather projections are wet this month, but not wet after that. And so we've got to survive this dry season. And so that's what's on my mind. I'm not wishing for any tropical systems, but just, a little bit of this stalled front, just hang out for a while. That'll work. So anyway, welcome to this Resiliency Forum. Glad you made it. Glad you tuned in. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Moran to take it from here. Thanks.
Thank you, Drew. Thank you very much. I would now invite Eddie Boza, our new Chief Resilience Officer for the state of Florida, to give us some opening remarks. Brief introduction. Good morning, Eddie.
Morning, Dr. Moran and everyone else. Welcome to the forum again. I guess similarly to Dr. Moran, I've been given the opportunity to have more stress. So I was recently named as the new Chief Resilience Officer for the state of Florida. I don't have any statewide Office of Resilience updates right now. I'm still kind of getting my feet under me. I've sort of had my first round of meetings, and so I'm still kind of figuring out the world and where I fit. And I'm still keeping up a lot of my regular duties with the Resilient Florida program. So I am prepared to maybe give just a quick update on that. As many of you probably know, we just wrapped up a portal application cycle. We received over 200 applications for about $1 billion in requests for projects. So that's $1 billion matched to request amount of $1 billion. So, you know, total project costs of $2 billion across the state. In project needs, we received over 100 applications for planning efforts, ranging from vulnerability assessment updates to adaptation plans to other planning projects to support feasibility studies for nature-based solutions or projects that are going to help create data for the Flood Hub. That was a request amount about $35.5 million. Our appropriation for that was $20 million, so we won't be able to fund all of those. We received a pretty staggering amount of additional funding requests for increased costs. So we're still sorting through those to see what costs are eligible to get some additional funding. We had a request amount over $100 million for additional funding for existing projects, which is more than what our appropriation might be expected to be. So we're keeping an eye there. And so our team has sort of mobilized around evaluating those applications. We have until December 1st to prepare our statewide flooding and sea level rise resilience plan to present to the legislature. And that would highlight all of the eligible projects and put them in ranked order for consideration during the next session. One thing that I'm also got visibility on from the Florida Commerce is they have funding for 2024 storm impacted areas, including tornadoes. They have an infrastructure repair program that was given $400 million to help with those areas that were impacted. And that application closes, I think, at the end of the month. So if you want to get any more information about that, you can reach out to us or to Florida Commerce. And I'm sure we're going to hear from Laura Dewey from FDEM mitigation later in the agenda, and she might have some highlights too. So thanks for the opportunity to introduce myself. Excited, I'm scared, I'm terrified, but I'm hoping that we can do good things all together. And I know we have a solid group at the statewide level and at the water management district levels to coordinate across the state for resilience from now and beyond. So thanks again.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Thank you for joining us here as you're stepping in and accepting to be with us today. We're certainly going to be coordinating. I am sure everybody in the room is a little bit less stressed than more 3-4 days ago with the submissions. You did get a large number, but I am certainly with the big load behind me at this point and happy to be here today after all those submissions and all the applications that we have been working with you, and thank you for leading this program as well at the state level. Okay, I'm going to move there to be able to provide some updates. Okay, so my first slide, I believe it was covered by Drew. Thank you very much, Drew. We have been working with the leadership on both the water supply and flood control. The exciting part about this is finding synergies among those two areas. This is planning. There is a lot of synergy we can find and a lot of integration that we can advance as part of this new structure. And we are beginning to step on those efforts and coordination efforts. So I am beginning and working very closely with again, as I mentioned, the leadership on the water supply team and the leadership that we have on the flood control planning. And really excited to be able to start on this new role. And thank you, everyone that is helping. I'm like you, Eddie. Your words can be mine in a lot of the aspects here. And excited to be moving in this new division here in the agency. We received the Florida Flood Hub earlier this month. last month here at the district. We had a very exciting knowledge exchange session with several of the internal groups. So all 4 scientific liaisons were here with us. They were able to work on the water and climate data group. In the morning, we do several coordination and collaboration from this side of the house, like how we can better do future scenarios, right? And the Florida Flood Hub works very closely with us, so it was great to start there. We also look at all the tools, flood documentation tools that we have, and also begin discussions on the new Florida Silver Jackets projects that we're going to talk about later today. We talk about the 2025 King Tide season with them as well, and some of the tools and preparation. They met with the FPLOS team in the afternoon, very long meeting, discuss all the modeling tools that we have, also aligning with what the Florida Flood Hub is doing in terms of modeling inventory and supporting a statewide effort in terms of flood modeling and adaptation planning support. And also they got the chance to visit the water control room, meet with the water operations team and the meteorologists in the house. It was a very good day. We also got to get them exposed to one of the presentations we were doing on the flood documentation as part of the GIS Expo. So thank you for the visit. Thank you for the whole team that supported the visit and really organized this day with the new scientific liaisons. As Drew mentioned, we did publish the 2025 Sea Level Rise and Flood Resiliency Plan. I believe it's being added to the website, our portal right now. It was shared with DEP on September 1st. After this meeting, you can log in and find the 2025 version. It's a comprehensive document. We have now flood risk assessments covering most of the urban areas within the water management district. This plan this year supported 9 of our grant applications to Resilient Florida. We really need to thank all the partners again for the contributions. We did receive letters of comments and letters of support and overall review on the plan one more time this year. I'm sending all the responses later this week as well and how those comments were addressed. And I really would like to also thank the project team in general inside the agency, but also Carola, Brizaga, and Delta teams. We have Lisa Arroyo here in the room. They work non-stop with us all those days and going to the minimum level of details to have a document that is very well done, really well put together. It does have robust content that was updated with the help of so many people, but also it's a very great look, and they work very closely with our communications team to get the whole document really revamped. And we do have a plan that is now going to be updated every 5 years, but a comprehensive document. So thank you, everyone, for bringing us here. Brief updates on implementation projects. We have submitted what we call historical preservation deliverables to FEMA FDM on the 3 funded projects. We received design funding for pre-disaster projects at C7, C8, C9, S27, S28, and S29. So we completed this major milestone, design and environmental historical preservation package. We delivered to FEMA, and we are working, FEMA and DM, and they are working now on reviewing these 3 deliverables and getting those projects ready for federal funding. We also have 3 MOAs, Memorandum of Agreements, that we are discussing right now with key project partners. We have 2 land negotiations also being finalized through those agreements. DEP Resilient Florida, we received 3 grant awards this year. 2 of them are for those same projects, so really aligning federal and state funds for those 3 projects. We received the 3rd one last year from DEP. So really great to have this opportunity to leverage funds at the state and the federal level, and we'll continue to do so as those projects do have an amount of funding that is even beyond those awards that we are receiving. So we continue to do the periodic site visits, quarterly reports for the ongoing projects. We are adding 3 more right now. Thank you, FDP, for working with us on this and reviewing, and we are working on reimbursement as well. And we have the ongoing flood adaptation planning study with San Lucie, Martin counties. We are working, I believe we have updates that we're going to be shared today. and a meeting later in the afternoon as well on the calibration of the model, so achieving a major milestone is there as well. And we are on the Innovative Tech Grant implementation, our Wipeout project. We are, design is being finalized, and we're going to bring the package for the construction and the bid package for the governing board approval in November this year. Two more important updates on the implementation. We hosted a town hall meeting at the C8 Basin project on August 14. Really well attended meeting, great participation, and we really appreciate the time the residents of the community are really dedicating to this project and working closely with us to refine. And thank you very much for the mayor of the village of Miami Shores as well for working with us through those meetings and the coordination that we need to continue to implement this project. As I mentioned, important real estate coordinations are still pending for two of those projects, and we continue to work with the project partners on this side. Moving into the local mitigation strategy coordination and hazard mitigation grant projects, we have 3 projects that are under Tier 2 allocation. They were finalized, reviewed by DM, and we are waiting for the move for the Tier 2 allocation. And that's a question that we're going to be able to have maybe perhaps some updates later in today in the presentation that we have from DM. We also have projects that we submitted for Hurricane Milton. So 3 new projects, 57, 60, 63. We also have, we resubmitted C29 that was submitted to Ian under a larger scope. And we also have Lake Mary Jane Pump Station is a complete new project that we are also submitting there. And we also opening path for the 3 projects that I mentioned earlier today under this post-disaster path, perhaps for funding allocation as well. These are the applications that we submitted to the EP. Eddie mentioned his very large effort now to go through this incredible number of applications again this year. We have very strong ones. I'm sure everybody in this room also have really strong ones. So let's work with the EP on those reviews. We have an upcoming planning meeting. I'm moving now to the CNSF Resiliency Study update. Team Geisen will talk about this later today and provide more updates in general on the CNSF flood resiliency studies for this specific effort that is led by us in collaboration with Broward County. We have this meeting on September 9. We are reaching a very important milestone on this project. So we're going to show the final results for the final results of the final array. We're going to also walk through the comprehensive benefits results, and we do have a draft tentative selected plan, and we're going to open up for comments. We also have initial design plans that will be shared on this meeting. We're talking about 9 structures as part of this project, so really great to be achieving this milestone and looking forward to coordinate with the project partners and receive the comments through this public meeting next week. LOS update, the program, the latest updates, as I mentioned, San Lucie, Martin County. We did achieve this model calibration and validation. We're going to have a meeting with the county to share some of the updates later today. C7 Phase 2 study, we are also wrapping up. We have the future runs finalized. Project recommendations also agree internally here and with the project partners, Miami-Dade County as well, and the municipalities. And we have, we're finalizing the final damage assessment memo. We have 2 more ongoing studies, Western Basins and Taylor Creek. They are moving according to the schedule and really being advanced in those 2 additional project areas. Water supply vulnerability assessment update. We completed a significant portion of the input data for the model. The model is also achieving calibration, one more. We will have a meeting with the peer review panel early in October to share all these results and updates from the calibration perspective of the water supply, the groundwater model. And as soon as we complete this step in the project, we're going to begin running the future scenario runs. We're going to include a 25-year, the traditional water supply plan scenarios, and under sea level rise. And we are also going to include a 50-year horizon looking at conditions that will be anticipated to occur, sea level rise and rainfall, extreme drought, and all the related aspects from the hydrologic perspective later this year. So really excited to be, again, achieving this important milestone and having a model that we can use to start answering some of the questions that we consider relevant in the region. Update on the water and climate resilience metrics. We completed as well this year everything lined up. This month has been very intense. So we completed the 2 chapters that our team is responsible for, 2A and 2B, last 2 weeks ago, less 10 days ago. So we have the traditional water year report, chapter 2A, and on 2B this year we brought long-term trends in rainfall. We updated this analysis. Last time we did was 4 years ago, and we got the latest years in the analysis, and we do have new trends that were identified and are being reported. The draw scenarios, those are the scenarios that we are using as part of the water supply vulnerability assessment. So we have all the documentation on how those scenarios and the assumptions were put together for this effort, also as part of this report. We have an analysis on high tide events, focusing on this high tide period of the year. It was something that was still missing on the phase 1 of the metrics effort. They're going to be presenting the results of this today here. And then we have the update on the saltwater intrusion. Is the same map that was published last year, 2024 update. It's now fully documented as well in this report. So we will open for public comments in the fall this year. So we welcome you sending us your updates and comments. We also have some brief updates on the future water and climate scenarios work group. All of those assessments are being done through a work group, an internal work group. As I mentioned, we had the first agenda item for the work group. That was the draw. That was the peer review of all the effort initiated by USGS. And this is how we really formulated the scenario for the water supply vulnerability assessment. We have future agenda items coming up. We're going to look at the rainfall, bringing all this new trend analysis and looking at this, how that can be integrated into rainfall projections. There is no atlas for teamwork being updated. The work is resumed. We're going to continue to follow and see how we need to integrate that in our rainfall frequency analysis in the house, looking at multi-decadal variations and more. And we are working very closely again with the Florida Flood Hub on those. We also have an ongoing effort, the Couple Ocean Atmospheric Statewide Regional Model that is right now running. We'll have some updates coming on this forum as soon as we can bring some of the results. But really excited to be working with universities and USGS and the Florida Flood Hub also on this model that will allow us to forecast again all those future conditions with less uncertainty. Finally, stepping into the wet season. This is the meeting that we talk about the wet season, and we reinforce the importance of collecting data. We have the portal up, the tools all up and running. So we appreciate the support from all of you, all the partners in submitting flood observations, collaborating with us in viewing all the flood data that we have and working through the repository. And really, we did a very great update on the local contact viewer this year with the support from our external affairs team. And we have the latest and greatest information available to support who you need to contact during those events. So the peak of the hurricane season is here. If there is flooding events, all the information is updated there. The tools are ready to go, and really who you need to contact is up and running with the latest and greatest information in our portal. We hosted the training for internal and external staff, all the partners, on how to access, how to collect the data, how to download the data from the website. It was provided in July. We also have now incorporated a notification system, automated notification that goes to each of the project partners, so local governments, water control districts. So whenever we have a observation in the system from a local rainfall event, flood-derived event, we automatically notify the local government, the same people that we need to contact. So people who needs to contact local drainage districts will also be contacted through this now new process. This is not being used as a formal notification system. This is being used as an information purposes only. So the full response needed during an event is continue to maintain on the same approach that we have established in the agency through 298 calls and through the coordination directly with operations and the water operators on the local system. And then just a final note there, we will have a testing on this notification system beginning in October, just again to make sure that everybody understands the purposes and why how this information is being shared with the local governments. King Tide season is here. We launched the first, resumed the first bulletin this Monday. We have here the dates for the events that we are monitoring this year. The two high tide events are predicted October 7 to 10 and November 5 to 9 based on Virginia key dates. We have specific dates throughout the East and the West Coast, and it's all shared through the portal that we have. So we are beginning again, all sharing the enhanced tide forecast and getting everybody informed about how those conditions might be exacerbated throughout the year, throughout this king tide season. With that, I'm wrapping up this introduction and the updates from the resiliency side of the house here. And I would like to invite Laura, opening up for questions, I apologize, before I invite Laura. Any questions? Yes.
Do I hold it down? Okay. Tom Lanahan, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. Can you briefly describe what your project Wipeout is? I imagine it's a fun acronym, but I don't know what it stands for.
Yeah. So it's through the Water Quality Innovation Grant through DEP. And what we are testing is technology. It's basically absorption technology that can help us filter pollution in certain areas that we can identify as part of our project. So perhaps along canal banks, perhaps in additional storage areas. So we are partnering with Miami-Dade County. We submitted a joint grant proposal to DEP. We are jointly funded. So we are working on testing. So we're going to build a trench system to test those three technologies and then determine applications and feasibility of that. Yeah. It's as part of our nature-based solutions efforts, and Irela is here. She helped us when she was in Miami to get this project going on, so we're excited to really begin construction for the trenches. Any more questions? Great. So with that, I will invite Laura Dewey, the Chief of Mitigation with the Florida Division of Emergency Management. She's presenting us an update on the hazard mitigation program today. Thank you, Laura.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, thank you. Again, I'm Laura Dewey, Chief of Mitigation at the Florida Division of Emergency Management. Next slide. So I wanted to talk about Elevate Florida. This is a program that we started in about January to try to expedite residential mitigation. There's been complaints, rightly so, from residents over the years of the residential mitigation grant projects taking too long to be reviewed and awarded by us and FEMA. And so we created Elevate Florida to try to expedite this process to get the resident, whole again quicker. So this could include structure elevation, mitigation reconstruction, acquisition, demolition, and wind mitigation. Typically, the wind mitigation would come in if we were elevating a structure and it needed to also be have a wind retrofit. So we're using two federal funding sources. These are sources that we already use, but we're just kind of using them in a little bit of a different way. So we're using HMGP and FMA Swift Current. So we're using funding from Helene and Milton for HMGP. And then we received $100 million for Debbie, Helene, and Milton under FMA Swift Current. So these project types will be the standard 75-25 cost share for the residents. Next slide. So we typically, the way that the residential mitigation projects work is the local communities handle it. They're the ones who work directly with the residents. They're the ones who put together the applications and send that to the state. And so with Elevate Florida, we're kind of trying to cut out the middleman of the local communities, because the local communities have said that it's too burdensome for them to handle on their own in a meaningful way, to do it on a broad scale. And so with Elevate Florida doing this statewide at the state level, we have 13 inspection vendors and 28 construction vendors. We are still onboarding and executing the construction contracts, but we will have 28 at the end. We've already submitted 305 applications to FEMA for the FMA Swift Current funding, and we are preparing to submit another 800 to 900 applications in the coming months for the HMGP funding. So we opened the application period for about 2 months from February to April, and we received over 12,000 residential applications. So that just goes to show, obviously, there is this need out there. People want to mitigate their homes. We're not going to be able to fund all 12,000 people, of course. We are only going to be able to fund at the most 2,000 properties. The total number we won't know for a little while still. We held a lot of outreach events to gather, interest, help explain the program. We have a call center that has handled over 30,000 calls since it opened. And we've completed over 800 pre-construction inspections. Next slide. So this is a little bit of a timeline to just kind of show where we are, where we've been, and where we're going. So we right now are over this last month of August, we were notifying all of the residents who unfortunately are not moving forward in the program. It was about 9,000 residents. So obviously very disappointing for them, very frustrating for them. But we wanted to let them know so that they could pursue other options, such as CDBG-DR, or maybe even My Safe Florida Home, or other options. And now we are going to be continuing to develop applications, get those to FEMA, get the approval, and then get that construction started as soon as possible. Next slide. So again, as I mentioned, oops, my light went off. We notified about 9,000 residents they're not moving forward. We do have a wait list in case the people that are prioritized drop out, so that we're sure we're using all of the funding available. So those people, if people drop out for whatever reason, we will notify those waitlist folks that they're going to be, having an opportunity to move forward. The pie chart here just kind of shows most of the applications were for an elevation. Very few really, applied for an acquisition demolition project. So most people, they want to get up and out of the floodplain and, reduce their risk to flooding. Next slide. This was the snapshot for July. I didn't have the August one quite yet, but if we're trying to send this out to the residents to provide as much information as we can to them, as well as to the counties. We did also send the list of addresses to all of the counties to share and to also share with their municipalities so that they, can kind of monitor the folks that aren't moving forward in Elevate Florida, but for some reason they applied to this program and maybe they feel they're at risk, and maybe the community didn't realize that area was potentially at risk. So trying to share as much information with the communities as we can and the residents, of course. Next slide. All right, so moving on to regular HMGP. This is for statewide, not specifically the counties in South Florida Water Management District, but we've got a lot going on in terms of reviewing projects, getting those sent to FEMA, and getting them awarded. Our Hurricane Idalia deadline is coming up in a few weeks. So we are finalizing those applications to get them completed and submitted up to FEMA. Next slide. And then we recently, in July and August, had deadlines for these 4 hurricane events. We received a lot of applications for these as well, so we are continuing to review the kind of initial assessment before we really dive into the meat and potatoes of the applications. Next slide. And then I pulled a little bit of just a stat that I could find for HMGP projects within the South Florida Water Management District counties. So any project within those counties. This is for awarded projects, this doesn't include the projects in review. But there's at least 477 projects. I think there's more because I didn't grab all of them. There were some that I wasn't able to find on the list that I was looking at. And but that totals over $256 million in federal shares. So a lot of funding going to South Florida Water Management District counties and communities. And that number is only going to continue to increase. And I believe that's the end of my slides, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Laura, for joining us today and providing those updates. So I'm going to go around the table to see if anybody has a question. Yeah.
Hello, Tom Lanahan, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. Laura, you had 12,000 applications that you hope to yield about 2,000 actual projects at the end. Was there a large number that just weren't going to be eligible at all because of the nature of what their situation or what they were asking to do? And if so, if we do this again, would there be some value in like a pre-screening tool of, answer these 4 questions and we'll see if you should actually fill out the application or not? Or were there other circumstances that led to such a big gap there?
Yeah, so for the most part, it's not that people weren't eligible. There were some instances of that, but most of the folks, there just wasn't enough funding. So there seems to be a narrative out there that we opened the application period and then went to get funding for the program, and that's kind of backwards. So we had the funding available and then opened the application period, and obviously many more people applied than we anticipated. And so unfortunately, we're just not going to be able to fund everyone. So if we do get more funding in the future and we decide to run this program again, which is very likely, the folks who were, quote unquote, denied for this round, their applications are being archived. So if the funding becomes available again, their application could be kind of turned on again, and they would be able to potentially receive funding in the future, as well as, we would open it up to the state again to get additional applications.
Thank you. And that's good to hear that you're holding on to their applications, because I know I think the My Safe Florida Home had a couple of injections of funding into it, which worked out really good for folks who were part of that. I know at least one person that did that, and it was great. So I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yep.
I do have 2 questions, but wondering if anybody has one. Okay, I will give mine, but feel free to jump on if you have any other questions. Laura, you mentioned that you were looking at areas at risk and confirming if those houses were within those areas of risk, and I think it was tied to your question, Tom. Can you tell us what kind of source of data you're using just to review these areas of risk? Is this like shared with the applicants ahead?
So we shared with every county the list of applications within their county, with the intention that, the counties are monitoring their communities, know where there are areas of flood risk. However, this list could be used to add to that. So when I mentioned that, that's what I was referring to. We certainly looked at, the FEMA floodplain. Other prioritizing risk factors were, previous damage, if they were, repetitive loss, severe repetitive loss, or if they had been substantially damaged. So we didn't prioritize based on any other risk factors, though, but we wanted to share the data in case there were areas that were potentially at risk that communities weren't tracking.
Perfect, thank you. And my second question is related to the Hurricane Ian Tier 2. Do you have a timing on when this might begin to switch to Tier 2? Have you completed Tier 1 awards?
So we are still pending a lot of awards from FEMA. They've been submitted, but we are in a bit of a holding pattern right now with FEMA awards. And so once those start flowing again, hopefully in the next couple of months, we don't know when they're going to start being awarded again. But once that happens, then we'll be able to look at the Tier 2 projects.
No, excellent. No, thank you. I know exactly where we were. Thank you for helping us on the pre-disaster front on coordinating with FEMA. Your support has been incredible. But yeah, I didn't know they were on the same path for the post-disaster line as well. So yeah, we know. So we'll keep an eye, and thank you for the update on that too.
All right.
Okay, we do not have
Thank
any more
you.
questions. Laura, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So now I'm going to call Susan Gosling and Dr. Lily Yu. I think Susan is making the main presentation. Dr. Lily Yu is here as well to answer any questions. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And they will talk about the Osceola County Flood Vulnerability Assessments and Adaptation Planning.
Good morning. I am Susan Goslin. I am the Water Resources and Policy Advocate for Osceola County. And as Carolina said, Dr. Lu Wu, who is our Water Resources Director, is here with me today. And we're going to give you an update on Osceola County's effort in resiliency. Let's see if I remember how to do this correctly, Yvette. Oh, got it. Okay. Where we started. This was Hurricane Ian. This is Good Samaritan Village. Catastrophic flooding from Shingle Creek. It's been an ongoing effort for us. And that pushed us to take some really big steps. So our steps started with Shingle Creek Basin study. This was a basin-wide effort to model Shingle Creek in flood and try to find some conceptual plans to fix the problem. We have also our Master Surface Water Management Plan underway. It is a county-wide Master Surface Water Management Plan, and to remind you, Osceola County is almost 1 million acres. It is a huge effort. And then we have our vulnerability assessment, which follows the Master Surface Water Management Plan. Now, Shingle Creek Basin study, where we are today, we've got the model complete. So we have one large unified model, and we've come up with some conceptual projects, one of which is removing shoals within Shingle Creek and removing what we're calling an island in Shingle Creek. This project is being submitted to the Florida Department of Commerce for a community development block grant under Hurricane Milton. And we're looking at, it's about a $6 million project off the tops of our heads. It will reduce flooding in the Shingle Creek Basin from 1 foot to about 1.5 feet in elevation, which in a very flat county is a long distance. We also are looking at adding storage along Shingle Creek in various locations. On our Master Surface Water Management Plan, as I said, Osceola County is a very large county, and this plan, this model development has taken longer than we expected. It's very complicated. What we have found is that there's places where the water runs in circles. We also understand that water doesn't care about geopolitical boundaries, and it will cross any watershed when it needs to. We've found multiple connections between the Upper St. Johns and the Upper Kissimmee Basin. And to give you an idea, that's a small area of the model that shows nodes. It's complicated, is the best way of putting it. For our vulnerability study, we are underway, but it is waiting for the Master Surface Water Management model to be completed. That model is in review right now, peer review right now. Once it is completed, we will be moving forward with the model in the vulnerability study, and we will be modifying, obviously, rainfall events within that model to look at future conditions. And hopefully we will identify impacts to our critical resources from current and future flood between the two studies and be able to move forward with resiliency funding to bring those areas up to date and hopefully for the future. A big one is going on, Tim. Shingle Creek and Kissimmee River Water Resources Development Act. Osceola County started chasing this quite a few years ago, and we are now in early days of this actual study, of the feasibility study. It is at this point a $5.9 million study with the Corps. And the idea here is to look at the Shingle Creek and Kissimmee River within the Upper Kissimmee Basin and to do some ecosystem restoration, obviously on our big Lake Toho, because it is very, very sick. And we will be looking at flooding within the Shingle Creek Basin to see if we can resolve some of these issues. This is a big deal for us, too. Now, our links to South Florida Water Management District's resiliency. So South Florida Water Management District, as we all know, manages the primary drainage system in Osceola County through a series of gates and channels. The infrastructure is aging. I can tell you my own infrastructure is the same age. It's not doing so well either. So, we are looking at what we can do to help the district with this. And the biggest issue has consistently been funding. These projects are getting ever more expensive. They're not getting cheaper. However, if we do not get these improvements to the primary system, any improvement we make to the secondary system is almost a moot point. We will not be able to move water anywhere. We will not have any capacity anywhere. To that end, we support South Florida Water Management District in their quest for hazard mitigation funding. We support all their efforts in resiliency funding for these projects. And we stand there as partners to try to get this infrastructure updated. It is necessary for us to continue on. I'm a quick talker. So, final note on resiliency. Sometimes you can't be resilient. Sometimes, come on, you have to walk away. We know it takes a minimum of 10 years to recover from a massive flood. And we also know that as hard as we try, we may still see some problems in the system. I am hopeful that the next time we come, we will present a very large project where we lift 145 homes out of flood. That one is underway right now, and it is a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you for the slides. We are happy to be walking in a lot of those assessments with you, exchanging models, exchanging data, exchanging assumptions, aligning really the priorities that we have identified here with the priorities that the county have been identifying, the municipalities. So, and working closely with the Army Corps as well, again, on the same fashion of trying to accelerate as much as we can those assessments, validate what are those needs, and go after, like you said, the funding for implementation of some of the critical projects. So thank you for the support you have been giving throughout those years on helping us identify, validate, and really size those projects. So I want to go around and see if anybody has any questions. Good. I'm glad. Thank you, Tom.
Susan, the housing that was lost in the flood that you showed that disappeared off your aerial there, how many units was that, and what type of housing was that?
The total of 43 structures, generally 4 housing units per structure, low to moderate income seniors. So
those looks like they had to be demolished, I guess, because of the damage. Were they? Do you have a project to relocate them to? And what happens with the land there now?
So Osceola County has stepped up and has built a community where many of these residents, hopefully many of these residents now reside. This particular area, when you look at the historic aerials, the creek actually ran through, Shingle Creek actually ran through there. And this is a cautionary tale of let's remove a bridge, stop the creek, and build properties. It suffered catastrophic flooding with every major storm event, 2004, 2011. Irma, Ian, it just reached the point where it was not economically feasible to elevate or to rebuild. The property itself is still owned by a private company. This is not a county project. The property does stand vacant at this point in time. It is very stark for many of us to go out there now after being out there when the community was very active. And you go out there now and it's a giant grassy field. It is very different.
Thank you for that.
Need to hold the button there?
Okay, thank you. Molly Holland from Charlotte County, and we're looking at the very same thing that you guys have just gone through. And my question was, can you give us a feeling for the decision-making tree that you went through to decide to do dredging in a creek? I'm sorry, not dredging, sediment abatement in the creek versus any other kinds of prospective projects that you had for there? How did you arrive where you did for that project?
So Shingle Creek Basin, 90,000 acres, highly developed. It starts actually in Orlando. And there's not a lot of capacity for storage further in the creek. When we started on this study, one of the questions we had from residents was, we keep seeing these shoals in the creek. Is that affecting the flow in the creek itself? And so we added that in as a question to our consultant, what is the effect of shoaling within the creek? We are hoping with our larger Shingle Creek Water Resources Development Act that we can figure out how to stop that from occurring so often, because we had removed a shoal, a very large shoal, at the mouth of the creek in Lake Toho, completed it in April of 2022. And in October of 2022, there it was again. So we know we have got to stop it, the movement of sand in the system itself. That is our biggest, I think, struggle in the entire system is the sand movement. It'll be interesting to see how it works.
I'm sorry, second question based on that. When you look at the long-term feasibility, as you mentioned, you moved some sand and it was back. And the long-term maintenance costs for that, what's the likelihood of just moving towards a more permanent or potentially permanent solution and just buying those properties out?
Well, it's more than the properties. We have roads that go under. You could elevate the roads. You can rebuild all the bridges so that they have larger span. What we really think we need to do is try to trap that sand somewhere. And we kind of know where it's coming from, but we've got to figure out how to stop that movement. Because Shingle Creek, north of that community, is fairly natural. It has had some channelization over the years, but there's still a pretty good sized floodplain. We've just only have one bridge in that very wide creek for water to go through. So of course the water is forcing a channel where it can flow the most, and we think that's where the sand's coming from. Hopefully we can find a way to fix that problem with that flow.
My question was kind of tied to this question as well. You mentioned that you are looking for storage options along the creek, but then you mentioned not within the creek necessarily. How are you approaching this as part of your initial assessment? I know you have more assessments to do, but how are you approaching looking at storage options?
So Shingle Creek isn't just one channel within Osceola County. It's actually 3 different channels. And there are some areas where we may have some small storage, not a lot, but every little bit helps. And hopefully that might do something. And if we can get more water held within the more natural area to rehydrate that floodplain that is currently being seeing less water than it should. We actually have wetlands receding in that area. If we can hold a little water up in there, that would be helpful too, without flooding anybody in that area out. That's the conundrum. You can't flood somebody else out.
Okay, no, good. Thank you so much, Susan. I'm sure we're going to be walking all those steps with you sooner than later. Okay. We do wanted to also invite our team to talk about how we are collaborating with the county with Susan mentioned, the applications that we have been advancing in the area, and Nicole Masters has been leading all this effort in coordination with the local mitigation strategy committees and the counties. So I wanted her just to provide a brief update on the more recent efforts on how the district is working on this area. Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Masters. I am with the South Florida Water Management District. Thank you, Dr. Moran, for the introduction. I am an external affairs specialist serving Orange, Osceola, and Polk counties for the areas that are within our jurisdiction. And on the heels of Osceola County's update, we wanted to share information with all of you about the work the South Florida Water Management District is doing to increase flood control resiliency in the Upper Kissimmee Basin. And so I'm going to be sharing some updates and information about the work we're doing regarding flood control infrastructure. I'm going to share some information about restoration projects and our partnerships. And so to start, after Hurricane Ian, the South Florida Water Management District identified areas within the system in the Upper Kissimmee Basin that needed to be improved. And so we worked with the Orange County Local Mitigation Strategy Working Group and the Osceola County Local Mitigation Strategy Working Group to share proposed resiliency projects that would help to improve flood control infrastructure and reduce flood risks in the areas that were identified as needing to be improved. And so we presented 4 projects to the groups, 1 to Orange County Local Mitigation Strategy Working Group, 3 to the Osceola County Local Mitigation Strategy Working Group, and for their review and consideration. And all of the projects were reviewed and ranked and endorsed by both of the groups, as Carolina went through earlier today in her presentation, but just wanted to recap here for you what we have done thus far. And so with that, we were able to submit grant applications to the Florida Division of Emergency Management for hazard mitigation grant program funds for Hurricane Ian. And as Carolina mentioned, we are awaiting Tier 2 funding for 3 of those. So that's the S58 Structure Enhancement and Temporary Pump Platforms, S59 Structure Enhancement and C31 Canal Conveyance Improvement Project, and the S61 Spillway Enhancement and Erosion Control Project. And then the C29, C29A, C29B, and C29C Canal Conveyance Improvement Project, we withdrew that grant application for hazard mitigation grant program funds for Hurricane Ian. We expanded the project, and after Hurricane Milton, we resubmitted that project for hazard mitigation grant program funds for Hurricane Milton. And then in addition, after Hurricane Milton, we identified 4 new projects. And so those are the Lake Mary Jane Pump Station installation on C30 Canal, the S63 Conveyance Enhancement on C34 Canal, the S57 Conveyance Enhancement on C30 Canal, and the S60 Conveyance Enhancement on the C33 Canal. And again, we presented these projects to the Local Mitigation Strategy Working Group. So 2 to the Orange County Local Mitigation Strategy Working Group. 1 was the one that we previously submitted, and then 3 new proposed projects to the Osceola County Local Mitigation Strategy Working Group. And they were all reviewed, ranked, and endorsed by both of the local mitigation strategy working groups. And again, that allowed us to be able to submit to the Florida Division of Emergency Management grant applications for hazard mitigation grant program funds for Hurricane Milton. And so as we go through this process, we look forward to sharing updates with all of you about how we are progressing. And then we also wanted to share information about our flood protection level of service program. Many of you are maybe already familiar with it. This is South Florida Water Management District's Flood Protection Level of Service program, and it started in 2015 and is conducted on a basin-by-basin basis every 8 to 10 years in perpetuity. And so it's South Florida Water Management District's strategy for assessing system-wide flood protection for current and future conditions, the impacts of land development, sea level rise, and a changing climate on flood control infrastructure. And in the Upper Kissimmee Basin for the Flood Protection Level of Service program this year, we completed the Phase 1 study. And so the final report has been published, and it's on our website, and it can be found under flood control and then Flood Protection Level of Service program and completed studies. And so wanted to highlight here that the information gathered for the modeling and the modeling itself has helped identify the areas that need to be improved. And also wanted to note that the information gathered for the Flood Protection Level of Service program and its associated studies is incorporated into the sea level rise and flood resiliency plan. And so with that, also wanted to just note here on the previous slide, the proposed projects that we shared, those can be found in the 2025 Sea Level Rise and Flood Resiliency Plan. And then when we're talking about ongoing resilience in the Upper Kissimmee Basin, just wanted to highlight here, recap again, the initial flood vulnerability study that has been done through the Flood Protection Level of Service program. That's the Phase 1 study for the Upper Kissimmee Basin. And then also highlight here that the initial adaptation study, the feasibility review has been conducted as well. And so that took the modeling from the Phase 1 study and combined it with future conditions with and without the 5 newly proposed projects. And so currently, we are understanding the level of service assessment and the major concerns, and we are looking at improving conveyance and canals, adding additional structures to improve conveyance capacity, and providing additional storage. And then, as we wanted to share information about the work we're doing regarding flood control infrastructure, and also the work we're doing regarding the Flood Protection Level of Service program, we wanted to share information about other projects that are happening in the Upper Kissimmee Basin. And so although these didn't originate from flood vulnerability assessments, they are under the Northern Everglades and Estuaries Protection Program, and they still help improve and increase resiliency in the Upper Kissimmee Basin. So just wanted to highlight this project is in Osceola County. It's the Parton Family Ranch Project, water retention and nutrient load reduction project. It's a public-private partnership, and that partnership is with the Doc Parton Family Ranch, also South Florida Water Management District, and DEP, FDEP, and FDEX. And so this provides additional water storage in the Lake Okeechobee watershed and flood relief in the localized system. It increases water retention and nutrient load reduction, improving water quality, and the goal is to rehydrate the historic storage of the landscape. Also wanted to highlight this project in Polk County, the Eagle Haven Ranch Project. It is a public-private partnership with Eagle Haven Properties, LLC, and as well FDEP and FDAX, and it passively retains stormwater runoff within 5 water management areas totaling 730 acres in order to reduce discharges to Lake Kissimmee and downstream water bodies. The project is part of an active cattle ranch totaling more than 3,400 acres, and it improves water quality. And then also wanted to highlight another project in Osceola County, the Gardner Cobb Marsh Restoration Project. It's a partnership project between the South Florida Water Management District, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and Ducks Unlimited, and it enhances existing wetlands by reducing drainage and extending the hydro period. The goal is to restore more than 6,500 acres of overdrained marsh and natural wet prairie floodplain, and it improves water quality in the Okeechobee watershed. And then we also, when we're talking about projects, we wanted to highlight here here the phased implementation of the Kissimmee River Headwaters Revitalization Schedule. It is the final phase of the Kissimmee River Restoration Project. It's the final non-structural component. The construction for the project, as many of you probably already know, ended in 2021, and that was jointly developed and constructed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the South Florida Water Management District. And so we wanted to highlight here the phased implementation of the Kissimmee River Headwaters Revitalization Schedule, the final phase of the Kissimmee River Restoration Project. So it's good to take a step back for just a moment and look at what is a regulation schedule. So it's a plan that manages the water levels in the Kissimmee River and surrounding lakes, and to support flood control, water supply, and the health of the lakes and restoration of the Kissimmee River, a new regulation schedule has been proposed and implemented. And so this is increment 1, temporary deviation. It's the first phase of the Headwaters Revitalization Schedule. It was proposed as a deviation to the interim regulation schedule, and the development of the schedule started in 2021 and was approved and implemented in August 2024, and it raises the regulation schedule in summer and winter and will remain in effect until a subsequent increment is implemented or upon implementation of the full Headwaters Revitalization Schedule. And this is just an image of the schedule. The red line indicates the current schedule, increment 1, temporary deviation. And so this Headwaters Revitalization Schedule is being implemented in phases to hold more water in lakes Kissimmee, Cypress, and Hatch-Nahal to allow for historic flows to the Kissimmee River while maintaining the same level of flood protection. And lastly, as I wrap up here, just wanted to share our next steps regarding resiliency in the Upper Kissimmee Basin. Of course, though, we look to all of you, all of our partners, everyone in the room, for your input on next steps, but here are some of ours. And so that's ongoing coordination with county local mitigation strategy working groups, continued coordination with partners to advance flood resiliency and restoration projects, provide support for local vulnerability assessments, and provide continued support of the Shingle Creek and Kissimmee River Flood Risk Management Study with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Osceola County. And of course, if any of you have questions about these projects or need additional information, you could reach out to me at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Any questions? With no questions, I think we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we will resume. Let's do 10:55, 5 to 11.
Hi, everyone. We're going to get started soon. If you please take your seats.
Okay, thank you everyone for being here. And resuming, we have another exciting presentation, and excited also to share that we did receive funding for 2 of the projects that we have been collaborating through the Silver Jackets. They are flood planning tools. So I will invite Army Corps and Stephanie Versus to present here for us. Yes, I was right. Sorry, I was looking for the doctor. Sorry, Stephanie. Dr. Verus to present here with us and give us the update of those 2 exciting projects.
Well, good morning, everyone. So I am Stephanie Verholst from the Army Corps. I'm sitting in Jacksonville today, and I want to share with you about our Silver Jackets projects that we have going on, as well as some of the other ways that Silver Jackets functions for flood resilience and assistance to communities across the state of Florida. Next slide. So Silver Jackets is a interagency group. It is called Silver Jackets because many agencies are represented by different colors, and Silver Jackets is being one other color that can then be signifying that many agencies are coming together to hopefully achieve a better outcome, that no one agency can have all of the answers, but that we can help put the puzzle pieces together to come to better solutions for flood risk management. Silver Jackets is a nationwide program, but we are divided into individual states. So each state has a Silver Jackets team. There are 56 total states. Total teams throughout the nation. We have District of Columbia, we have the Navajo Nation team, and we also have the territories having their own teams. So the interagency aspect comes in that we have federal, state, local, tribes, academics, nonprofits, a number of different entities that can bring their expertise and knowledge to hopefully improve our flood resilience. Next slide. And there are 2 different methods that Silver Jackets functions with. One is that we have the interagency Silver Jackets team, and these are all state-led teams. This is either the state, in particular in Florida, our state lead is the Division of Emergency Management. We have different state agencies that are involved in the team, and also different tribes and the different federal agencies participating. So the state does set the team priorities. The Army Corps is then a partner in all of this, that we can facilitate and provide coordinated support through Silver Jackets. So that is like the function of the team. And then we also have Silver Jackets project team. So there are 2 different entities, but they also have a lot of overlapping partners and players. So Silver Jackets project team is when is a need identified by a community or a county, or just across the state that needs technical assistance from different entities, whether it is finding solutions to flooding or droughts or other natural hazards. And these are going to be more focused with, clear goals and objectives, and hopefully at the end of the project having a product, whether it is a report or a website, pamphlets that then can go to the needed communities or agencies that can then assist the flood management. And so one of the interesting aspects about these project teams is that there is an official proposal mechanism to fund projects through the Army Corps. So the funding this isn't a grant mechanism. It is a proposal to say that the Army Corps can support the efforts. And we have proposals that are actually coming due next week. I think it is next week, the 12th of September. So we do have some proposals that we're putting forth to be funded, hopefully maybe by December of this coming year. But I'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end. But if you're interested in participating in a proposal, or you have a proposal idea, just reach out to me and we can talk more. Next slide. Oh, sorry, next slide. There you go. Go back. There you go. So Silver Jackets is not just the Army Corps. Like I mentioned before, it is an interagency team. My partner in crime for Silver Jackets for the team leads is Evan Jenkins at the Florida Division of Emergency Management. So Evan and his team participate in our projects. He participates in the state team. And we have a great working relationship. So it's me and Evan being the leads, and we are hopefully guiding the team and taking advice and moving the team forward as best we can to assist in Silver Jackets. Next slide. And so Silver Jackets has many goals, mostly to improve resilience, and in our case, resilience in Florida. We want to reduce flood risk, and this could be coastal flooding, and it could be inland flooding, as we've seen, in Osceola County with Shingle Creek. Astor, Florida had a lot of flooding from Hurricane Ian. And so we want to try to bring methods and strategies to reduce flooding consequences. And through our efforts, we want to promote community understanding and hopefully spur or assist in potential future actions. A number of our Silver Jackets projects have spurred secondary projects that the Army Corps has supported through our different mechanisms like CAP or PAS projects. So we can be a stepping stone to what Carolina was mentioning earlier about some of our Silver Jackets projects. Well, I guess just this past April, we finished the Florida Basin level flood inventory project. And so this project is then like bringing forth two subsequent projects that are listed here, the community guidebook to flood modeling, and then flood observations for regional coordination and community engagement. Most of the Silver Jackets projects all have a community engagement portion to it. It is trying to provide information and education to the public, whether the public being people and residents or municipalities and community planners. So we do have a lot of public engagement involved in all of our projects. Next slide. The partners that are involved in not only the flood basin modeling inventory that was completed in April, but also the 2 projects that spurred from that. Lots of partners to make it successful. And here are just some of the main players that have participated in one or more of the Silver Jackets projects. Of course, the Army Corps is involved. NOAA has provided technical information, their expertise in flooding and mapping. FEMA is also involved in our projects. The FDEP has been essential in developing some of the products for our different projects, like the dashboard that I'll explain in just a second, that houses our flood modeling inventory. Division of Emergency Management. All 5 water management districts are heavily involved in our flood planning tools. And then the Florida Flood Hub, which, if you're not familiar with it, is an entity that is housing the flood models and is going to maintain the modeling inventory and update it as needed. And of course, there are many more agencies and non-governmental organizations that have participated in these projects. Next slide, please. So the Florida Basin Level Flood Assessment Inventory that was completed in April had project goals that would have a comprehensive inventory and kind of like a one-stop shop house for these models to be curated and maintained. So what the goals then were to, after having this comprehensive inventory, is to provide a framework for prioritizing and completing the flood data and basin level assessments, and then developing an inventory and catalog to then demonstrate where there are vulnerable communities due to data deficiencies. So looking at gaps where we might not have flood models developed. And through this effort, we then are able to have this statewide database housed at the Florida Flood Hub. And I don't have the link to the database in the slides, but I can provide that after my presentation, that you can then click on it and look at all of the different flood models, the different areas of the state. And so this statewide database houses all of the flood models that we are aware of that have been identified, and then it provides an interactive tool that then community planners or flood managers can then access different types of models to know what is available for their planning purposes. Next slide, please. And so one of the benefits, or a few of the benefits that came from this inventory project, is developing a centralized location to flood modeling. And actually, I do have the link. I don't think you can actually click on the link from the presentation, but again, I'll put it in the chat when I'm done. And so having that centralized location for flood modeling, it can then allow all the planners to see what is available. Again, where are their gaps, like I mentioned before. And also it has spurred on additional projects that can take this flood inventory or flood model inventory and expand it into the ability to have guidebooks that help describe how to use them, as well as then developing projects of flood observations. How can we make sure that we have a consistent method of collecting flood data that can then help inform some flood modeling? Next slide, please. So jumping into the first of the two projects that Silver Jackets is working on this year, we have the Community Guidebook to Flood Modeling. This is part of this multi-year, multi-step effort through Silver Jackets with the Water Management District and a number of the other state agencies to have the flood inventory now being converted or developing this guidebook that can be maybe more in layman's terms of how each flood model works, what are the pros and cons of the different models, what models are available to different in different communities, when would it be appropriate to use certain models? So understanding the how, what, and why associated with some of the different flood modeling. These projects, or this project is in its infancy. We did just have a kickoff meeting for the project. I think it was last Tuesday. It was the last week. It was just recently. And so what the team is now trying to develop and bring together is what should we include in this community guidebook, and some topics that we've talked about as a team is looking at best practices for using models, what types of floods are appropriate, or what types of models are appropriate for what types of floods, the pitfalls to avoid when developing or using different flood models. So just a tool book. After you have this inventory of models, let's give it a method for communities to use this inventory. Next slide, please. And so what we hope to accomplish, again, we are in its very infancy, is to create this guidebook. And how are we going to get there is what the team is starting to accomplish. The Florida Flood Hub is taking some first steps of, taking and making an understanding of what types of information is currently housed in the inventory, and making sure that we can have a consistent and comprehensive understanding of what information is currently there, so that we can then develop a guidebook based on what data is or are available. So the process is, data sharing, data collection, designing the guidebook. How do we want to share it? What do we want it to look like? And then putting all of that information together for the final product. All of this takes time. Again, we just started. One of the other aspects that we always want to consider in Silver Jackets is, do we have the right players? Do we have all the partners involved? Are there missing entities? Where can we reach out to find some other expertise that we can bring to the project? All right, next slide, please. And then following the community guidebook, concurrently we have the Flood Observation Regional Coordination and Community Engagement Project. That is a mouthful. But what we hope to have from this project is to delineate processes, developing maps, or identify existing tools to collect data on flooding, and promote community engagement for compilation of observations. And so this could range from a data repository for a product, or like a tool to collect and provide methods to record flood observations. All right, next slide. And again, the kickoff for this project is actually tomorrow. So this has not officially started. If you're interested in participating in this project or the community guidebook, please reach out to me. We can always work with partners that would be appropriate for the project. All right, next slide. The general schedules for these projects, again, very draft, but we had our partner kickoff meetings last week and this week, and we hope to have final products come December, January timeframe of 26, 27. They're roughly 18-month projects, so fast forward 18 months from now. December, January is when we hope to wrap these projects up. Next slide. And so to bring it to a close on Silver Jackets, if you are interested in being involved in project teams, please let me know. Contact information is on the next slide. But we also have Florida Silver Jackets team quarterly meetings and webinars. We actually have a webinar scheduled this afternoon. I think it starts at 1 p.m. If you want to attend our quarterly meeting, send me an email and send you the invite. And then we also have interagency proposals due next week. And if you have any other questions, comments, want to know more about Silver Jackets, please reach out to me. And I would love to talk about Silver Jackets more with you. Next slide. And here's how you can reach either me or Evan, being our state coordinators, my email address, phone number. We are a team of many partners. So please, if you're interested, we are always looking for ways to involve more individuals, more agencies, more expertise.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephanie. As she mentioned in the email, she did ask me to forward to her a list of partners that would like to be involved in this project, and I'm like, I'm not going to handpick a few of them. So everybody in the call or everybody in the room, if you want to be part of one of those projects, just email her. We have several tools, several assessments that we are doing in South Florida. I'm sure the communities here have a lot to contribute to the discussion, so please reach out to her. Get involved on those groups. Those efforts are kind of short-term, 18 months, but it's impressive how we end up with concrete deliverables out of these efforts with the support from DM and the Army Corps. So anyway, I'm inviting everybody in this room and in the call to respond and let Stephanie know if you are interested in joining. And with that, I'm going to go around, see if anybody has any question for Stephanie. Okay. Thank you very much again, Stephanie. Looking forward to the meetings that we have this afternoon and tomorrow. Okay, moving to the one more topic here. As I mentioned, we partner with the on this effort on evaluating high tide events next to our coastal structures. They are also the same team and group that is helping us on the enhanced tide forecast. So with that, I'm really happy to invite Professor Brian McNulty, University of Miami. He's working with Nathan Taminger on this effort. So thank you for being with us today, Brian. And yeah, please go ahead and present this latest updates.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. And we definitely, on behalf of both myself and Nate, we really have appreciated being able to work with South Florida Water Management District on the enhanced tide forecast, as Carolina alluded to. And I'll actually throw in some bonus content at the end to talk about that a little bit. But most of this is going to be on the analysis of high tide events at the coastal structures, which we've recently been working on. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, that this analysis is going to look at 35 of the district's coastal structures, the ones that interface with the tides. To prevent saltwater intrusion and tidal flooding, these gravity-operated structures must be closed when the tidal water level, which is called the tailwater, gets too close to or above the inland water level, which is called the headwater. We're going to look at trends of high tide events at each gravity operated structure based on the observed tailwater and headwater levels. And high tide events are a type of a hybrid risk. So it's not just the tides. It's not just a sea level rise analysis. These high tide events are linked to the relationship between the tailwater and the headwater. So it's related to not just the tides, but rainfall, drought, and upstream management. Next slide, please. This is just a map showing where these 35 structures are that we looked at, mostly on the southeast coast. As you can see, there's 4 on the west coast in Collier County. The low-lying topography makes this operation hard because even by the best of designs, there are places in South Florida where the headwater and the tailwater designs elevations are not that far apart. So you don't have a lot of room to work with. Sea level rise is absolutely playing a role and will continue to play a role. Next slide, please. We just had a wonderful, wonderful mentions from the Florida Flood Hub. This is the sea level rise estimate from their 2024 outlook. We're looking at roughly 5 to 6 inches by 2040. This is relative to the 2020 levels, so pretty recent. So yeah, 5 to 6 inches by 2040, and 13 to 18 inches is the span in 2070. To put those numbers in context, in Miami-Dade County, the difference between the headwater and tailwater design elevations is within that range. We're from greater than 1 foot on the high end to, in some cases, less than half a foot. So this best estimate, looking forward to 2070, is absolutely of great interest here. Next slide, please. For this study, we're calling a high tide event anytime the tailwater comes within 0.1 feet of the headwater, prompting closure of the control structure. And when the gate is closed, the tailwater can actually be above the headwater during high tides, especially during king tide season, which we'll talk about. Now, this is an important point, the second one. This condition can be met, but then persist sometimes for days or even weeks at some structures. So I think at the onset of this project, we thought we could count a frequency of events, and that quickly looked to be not a great way to do it, because an event can occur. In my example here, you could have 2 events occur in one day, where you could meet the criteria during a high tide, slip back below it at low tide, meet it again at high tide. So you could have 2 events in one day. Or you could meet the criteria at some high tide, and the water level could stay high enough that you have to keep the structure closed for days or weeks at a time, and that still would count only as 2 events. So counting events did not make sense. So a lot of what I'm going to show is going to revolve around counting the percentage of time that the condition is met. And that percentage of time will be counted by month. Next slide, please. Actually, sorry, you can click. I forgot that this had a one-click thing in it just to bring up the text. Thank you. I meant to get rid of that. So just to introduce the concept of a heat map here, this is just, it's called a heat map because it's kind of higher values are just shown in more saturated colors here. And in this example, I'm picking on the S13 structure, which is of all 35 structures that we looked at, this is the one that has the most, it's the most at risk from high tides. So they don't all look like this, just to put out there first. But this one is nice for showing what I'm trying to show. This type of heat map, we're just looking at the percentage of monthly observations when the tailwater was above the design headwater elevation. And that's a fixed level. So that's not anything that changes. That's a level that was determined when the structure was built. So this effectively just shows the tides, really. When you're looking at the tailwater level relative to a fixed height, you're basically seeing the effect of the tides. And that shows up very nicely here. You can see king tide season in the fall, September, October, November. There's a lot of times where the tailwater is above the design height, very high percentages there. And in the winter and spring, much less. The other trend you're seeing here, which is sea level rise, is down in the late 80s and early 90s at the lower part of the plot. And as you move your eyes toward the top of the plot, you're getting more saturated colors. That just means that this condition is occurring more and more often throughout the year. That is sea level rise. Okay, next slide, please. And I think that'll need another click for the text. Sorry about that. This is another type of heat map, and this is one where we're looking where the percentage of monthly observations when the tailwater was within 0.1 feet of the headwater elevation. And this is what we're considering a high tide event because it relies on not only the tailwater level from the coastal end, but but also the headwater elevation from upstream. And it's still strongly related to the tides, but there are more complicating factors going on here. And so this is kind of more the impactful story here of how often during certain months do structures need to be closed. And again, I'm picking on the S13 structure, which is kind of the most extreme example, but it's to kind of show the plot because there are plots like this in parts of South Florida water management districts where the structures don't have a problem at all with this, and this plot is basically empty. That's a good thing. You want these plots to look empty. And I do have a little note down there that these levels are fixed, so they don't reflect real-time or evolving system dynamics. This does not necessarily indicate operational challenges or vulnerabilities, but we're just working with these, the observed headwater and tailwater data as they are. Next slide, please. I'm going to take a minute to explain this. This is looking at 4 seasons of the year. And the upper left is what I'm calling king tide season, which is September, October, and November. Those are the 3 primary months of king tide season, the highest tides of the year. The upper right is winter, which is the following 3 months, December, January, February. The lower left we call spring. That's going to be March, April, May. And then the lower right, we're calling summer, which is June, July, and August. So we broke the year up into those 4 seasons. 2 of them combined roughly make up the wet season. So that's, we're looking at summer basically, and king tide season encompasses nearly all of the rainy season or wet season. And then winter and spring are approximately the dry season. So they're not completely unlinked. And then what the plots themselves show, we can just look at, let's say, the king tide season one in the upper left. Each year, we calculated the percentage of time during that whole season that the high tide event criteria was met. And then you do that year after year after year. And the red line is just a linear trend line through the points. We get a slope through that, and so that's going to be useful to determine how a certain structure's risk is evolving due to these high tide events. And it's curious, I can't show this for all 35 structures, of course, but there are structures where the strongest trend, the most upward trend, is actually not king tide season. It's trending faster in some other season, even though king tide season is currently the most impactful. So that's kind of an interesting side note to what we found. I won't have time to dig into that too much, but just wanted to put that out there. Next slide, please. And this one, these are interesting plots too, which of course I can't show for every single location. But this is just one example where this high tide condition is not met too often, just in extreme cases. This is where a dot is plotted every hour over the entire period of record. So there's a lot of dots here. They're shaded in gray when you're under normal conditions, not high tide event. And then they're shaded in red when the high tide event condition is met, which means the tailwater is within 0.1 feet or above the, the headwater, and the structure has to be closed. So at this structure, it doesn't happen too often. These are going to be generally related to perigean full and new moons. Perigean means that's the point in the moon's orbit where it's closest to Earth, and that enhances its tug on our oceans. And then when it's full and new, that also enhances the pull. So some of these extreme events show up there, and actually these would show up at a lot of tide gauges around the world, the same ones. But also in a more local sense, certain tide gauges or certain coastal structures will be influenced by a nearby hurricane. And that nearby doesn't mean storm surge necessarily. It just means you can have a hurricane 500 miles away, and the swell energy eventually reaches the coast and can enhance these sorts of things. So this is kind of one way to look at that. Again, this is a structure where really only the most exceptional cases show up. Next slide, please. This is the same plot, but for that S13 structure that I've been mentioning, which is the most extreme case of all 35 structures. And you can kind of see why this is the extreme case. Again, it's the same plot as before. The dots shaded in red indicate that high tide condition was met. And if you can pull anything out of this is, one, it happens very often here, and that it's happening more often than it used to. In other words, there's fewer retreats back into the gray between the reds. Oh, and yeah, I did want to note too that this structure actually relies on pumps. There's very little great gradient between the headwater and tailwater. So it needs a little nudge. All right, next slide, please. And I kind of mentioned a little bit of this before, but it's not just sea level rise that we're looking at here. That is absolutely producing an upward trend in the occurrence and frequency of high tide events, but they're also related to nearby or even distant hurricanes, as I mentioned. You can get widespread heavy rain events that influences the upstream structures and management. Perigean, newer full moons, spring and king tides, as I mentioned too. And we kind of even saw some effect in what type of coast these structures meet at, when the canals meet the coastline. Is it a broad marshy estuary or is it open water? That seems to play a role too. It's a little more nuanced than we could get into during this, but it's interesting, I think. Next slide, please. So to wrap this part up, high tide events are driven by a combination of headwater and tailwater levels. Sea level rise is certainly the dominant source of the trends. The seasonal cycle is apparent, and individual events can often be linked to certain influences, like the moons and the moon phases and proximity and hurricanes. The coastal structures exhibit a wide range of risk levels from high tide events. Roughly half of them, again, I only showed about one to 1.5 of them during this, just for the sake of time. But roughly half of them really don't even show up as being at risk from high tide events. Coming in meeting that high tide event criteria. And there's very few that we would consider high or extreme risk. And pump operations and their implications on flow are a growing factor, and this can help identify the structures that might need to be prioritized for pump operations. We do have a detailed table of site-specific data and seasonal trends that will be available in an upcoming technical publication. Carolina alluded to this, chapter 2B for 2026. And these results are just one component of a broader resilience planning effort focused on long-term trend evaluation in water and climate data. So that's going to wrap up this portion on the high tide events, and I'll take questions on that at the end of part 2 here. Part 2 is just going to be a brief introduction to these enhanced or smart tide forecasts. I wanted to kind of briefly introduce this because we're getting into the heart of king tide season. We're very grateful for continued support from South Florida Water Management District. They began funding this in December of 2022, and that's ongoing. It's now a real-time product. We started producing the real-time forecasts in mid-2023. And so we create 10-day tide forecasts that account for current conditions in the atmosphere and the ocean at 7 sites across South Florida. And those 7 sites are marked on the map on the right there. Those are the tide gauges that these tide forecasts are made at. For these quote-unquote smart tide forecasts, we begin with the NOAA tide predictions. That's, we're not having to start from scratch and create tide predictions. Those exist, and they're, it's a fine place to start. We add site-specific sea level rise adjustments, meaning that we can look at what the sea level rise has been at each location and correct for that. That kind of brings you up to the current year at least. Then we also account for the surface pressure. Turns out, when you have a general high pressure system over the area, that extra mass of the atmosphere pushing down on the ocean depresses it a bit, and you actually decrease the tides in the area. And when it's a low pressure, generally over the area, the ocean is allowed to bulge up a bit, and it increases. We use 10-day forecast of about 5 parameters from models in a multiple linear regression model. Those include things like surface wind, ocean temperature, significant wave height. There's a short list, but I'm not going to get into that now for the sake of time. And it's important to note that these forecasts are only designed for routine flooding events, not for hurricane storm surges. There are storm surge models out there, and that's what you should use if there's a hurricane coming. This is not for that. Next slide, please. We create 4 versions of this every day. They're available by 7 a.m. for all 7 sites. Just for anyone who's interested in a slight detail, we have versions created from the American model, the GFS, and from the European model, ECMWF. We also create a deterministic version, which is when those models are run with a single outcome. And we create these based on each of those models' ensembles, which is when those models are run with lots of slightly different conditions to give you a little bit of a spread. And we utilize the 0 UTC model cycle of each, if that's relevant to anybody's interest in this. Not going to get into validation results just yet, but we've looked at it. They do show forecast skill through all 10 days. It gradually decreases with time, of course, like all forecasts. And there is less skill on the West Coast compared to the East Coast. That seems to be a fairly complicated relationship. We're not entirely sure why that is yet. I mean, the tides on the West Coast in general are a little more complicated than the East Coast ones. But anyway, that's just something we've noticed so far. And for the sake of this, we define skill as just if you can beat the NOAA predictions plus a sea level rise correction, which is that kind of cheap way to bring you up to the current year. If you can beat that, you have skill. So that's all we're saying there. Next slide, please. These are just going to be some examples of what the graphs look like that are available online. You're not intended to read all these numbers or anything, but these two show the European model on the left, the GFS American model on the right. This is an example from last November. And this is showing the full tide cycle. So you've got the highs, the lows out to 10 days. And this is useful for seeing how it's timed. You know, if you wanted to know that you're going to have the two high tides at such and such times of day, that's where this is useful. We also mark the National Weather Service's minor flooding threshold in the orange dashed horizontal line, and the moderate flooding threshold would be in the red, and the major flooding threshold would be in the purple, which in these plots is not even on here because it's too high. But and then we just have our model forecast in the light blue line. And in this case, the model did extremely well. The observed peak water level on November 15th and 16th was 1.7 and 2 feet, which was really, really close to what the forecast model did. And, you know, definitely offered some good skill. Next slide, please. These two types of plots are also available. It basically shows the same information, but instead of showing the full tide cycles, the highs and lows and everything, this is just the peak value each day. And we generally prefer to look at the ensembles this way because we also include the ensemble spread. We have the 10th and 90th percentiles around the ensemble mean shaded in the light gray, and the 25th and 75th percentiles around the ensemble mean shaded in the dark gray. So, you know, when you're looking at just the maximum each day, you're able to kind of see that ensemble spread a little bit more. And so in this case, the NOAA tide predictions is the red line. Really nice to see that there. You can see it very clearly. The NOAA tide prediction plus the sea level rise adjustment is the orange line. And then our model forecast is the light blue line with the ensemble spread around it. So you can see what it offers in addition to just kind of the very quick and dirty sea level rise adjustment. Next slide, please. So yeah, these offer skillful, actionable outlooks up to 10 days in advance. They went online in June of 2023. They're of course used by South Florida Water Management District for their the weekly king tide forecasts, which have just begun. But they're also used by, as we've learned over the years, lots of other agencies and municipalities in South Florida, and that's always exciting to hear about. So we definitely thank them for their interest in this. And next slide, please. And these are available for everyone to use every day on the South Florida Water Management District Resilience Metrics Hub and the weekly tidal outlook bulletins, and that link is there. So they've got their contact information there, my contact information there, and I'll wrap up and take questions on either this or the high tide events.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you for the work and collaboration. We have been missing this one, as I mentioned, the assessment of the high tide events in our coastal structure. So it's exciting to be getting here. I know Nicole, who has been leading the water and climate efforts, is very happy to wrap up phase 1 and have all those initial metrics now completed. So thank you for the extensive work, and also the visuals that you produce as part of this has been always very strong and help us on really documenting those trends. Questions around the table? Any question to Brian? Okay. We have no questions, Brian. Thank you very much.
right,
We'll
thank you.
continue to coordinate as we finalize the report. Thank you. Okay, we are going to then bring Tim. Thank you very much, Tim, for being here with us today and really presenting the CNSF flood resiliency studies updates. Thank you again.
All right, good morning, everyone. Tim Geisen here. Formerly the Resilient Senior Project Manager at the Corps, and now I'm the Chief of the Ecosystem Project Section and the Resilience Coordinator. So I self-glossed myself Resilience Coordinator to keep that in my title. I'm going to talk a little bit today about some of our resilience projects, mostly those in planning. But there are quite a bit that also fall under construction that we could have a whole nother meeting on. All right. Start off with just kind of high level, and I think most of you have probably seen this slide before, but I always like to reiterate at the beginning of any resilience presentation this kind of point that we all play our part in building community resilience, whether we're at a federal, state, or local level. And I want to add in private sector and universities into this as well. I just have to figure out how to doctor up this graphic. But I think the takeaway is it's really up to all of us to play our own parts in community resilience, but understand how our parts fit into the big picture and how other people's projects are working together to build that resilience. And all that really comes from communication. So that's why these forums like this are so extremely important to not only build those connections, but also give us a place to talk to each other and spread the word on the work that we're doing, kind of build those connections organically. Glad I'm kind of going last because I get to reference things that other people have said in their presentation. So I want to go back to what Drew said in his opening remarks, that our water resource infrastructure is really what connects all of these efforts together, whether they be flood risk management or water supply, restoration work that we're doing. It's all connected by our water resources, and that's why it's so important that we're here to talk about the projects that help preserve those water resources and the infrastructure that enables us to all live here in the state of Florida. All right, so I like this map because it shows all of the core projects that we have going on in South Florida across all of our mission areas. Most of our projects are going to be focused on kind of the higher level regional or primary networks, which, and as Susan mentioned in her presentation, the importance of tackling all of these different levels. So while the local projects are typically focused more on tertiary or secondary networks, it's really important that the primary water resource infrastructure is also addressed. Otherwise, those smaller scale projects aren't going to work. So that's where the Corps typically comes in with the state, is doing these kind of larger scale projects to help the primary infrastructure, which then helps the secondary and tertiary infrastructure as well. So our projects are focused across many different mission areas, including navigation, coastal storm risk management, inland flood risk management, water supply, and aquatic ecosystem restoration. So this map is probably easier to see if you have it right in front of you, but it shows kind of all of the ongoing work we have across all of those mission areas. And to me, having that kind of landscape look helps kind of see how they all fit together. So I always like to have this around because it not only helps to show how our projects fit together, but if you have it in front of you, you can kind of envision how the projects you may be working on at the local scale fit into the larger resilience picture. So this map, like I said, it shows coastal storm risk projects that we have ongoing all up and down the coast. These are represented by the orange dots or the turquoise dots. And those include not only our beach coastal storm risk management projects, but also the back bay studies that we do, particularly highlighting the current ongoing Miami-Dade Back Bay study that is addressing coastal storm risk down in Dade County. We have several large navigation projects which are currently have different planning going on, Port of Miami as well as Port Everglades. And then we also have work in Tampa Harbor as well. And again, you don't usually think of navigation as fitting into this, but it really is a big part of building community resilience. The economic impact that navigation has on our communities is extremely important, and making sure those projects function within the system and are able to be resilient to coastal storm flooding or even inland flooding impacts. So there is that tie-in there, so it's important that we're also looking at those in terms of community resilience. We've got a ton of aquatic ecosystem restoration projects under SERP, as well as the Kissimmee River restoration ongoing. These are all kind of shown either by polygons or the numbered projects on there. And of course, our flood risk management projects, which Susan already talked about, Shingle Creek, and we already mentioned the CNSF Flood Resiliency Section 216 that's going on down in Miami-Dade County. So I'm going to highlight some of the again, some of the big planning projects, but there's a lot of construction going on, active and completing. So I don't want to forget about the completed projects. So we could talk about those maybe at another time. All right, I'm going to start off with one of our big SERP planning projects, the Biscayne Bay and Southeastern Everglades Restoration, or BBCR. I'm sure everybody's probably heard of that one. It's been going on for a little while. But that project is really focused on improving our water depth and duration in the freshwater and saltwater wetlands, kind of bringing water from the inland area and rehydrating those coastal wetlands for not only their ecosystem response, but those coastal wetlands are also really important when it comes to coastal storm risk management. So that project, just to highlight kind of where that stands right now, the tentatively selected plan was identified earlier this year, and now work is going on to further engineer those components. You may be aware that part of the new push from the Corps is to further develop the engineering design during our planning projects, so we end up with a cost for those projects that's more realistic as to what it will be at the end. We've had historically in our smart planning projects run into problems where when we get to construction, our costs go way up. So doing a better job of the engineering on the front side will help keep those costs at a understandable level throughout the life cycle. So that work is ongoing right now, as well as modeling for project assurances. And if you're familiar with SERP, there's something called the savings clause that all of SERP projects have to adhere to. And that basically just means that from a water supply and flood risk management perspective, we can't do any harm or change things beyond what they were at the authorization of SERP back in 2000. So those assurances, our modeling is going on right now. That will be occurring over the next 4 months or so as we move towards the TSP milestone, or the tentatively selected plan milestone, which is the next big planning milestone where we get approval from our vertical team all the way up to Washington to release the draft report. That tentatively selected plan milestone for BBCR is scheduled for next June. So we're making good progress towards that, and a lot of the work we're doing right now from the engineering design perspective will go into that draft report, which would be released later next year. All right, switching missions, we'll talk a little bit about flood risk management projects. So this one, the CNSF Flood Resiliency Section 216 study, focused in the Miami River Basin. You may be tracking from previous presentations. This is part of the original larger scale CNSF Flood Resiliency project that covered Broward and Dade counties. So this 216 efforts focused just in the Miami River Basin. And Carolina mentioned the Section 203 effort that the Water Management District's leading with Broward County, covering that northern basin, and they're making real good progress on that. I think a draft report may be coming out towards the end of this calendar year on that project. For the 216, we just re-engaged efforts earlier this year and are working to finalize the economic modeling of our future without project condition, which will help inform finalizing an array of alternatives. So we're working right now to finish that modeling with the HEC FDA model, and then also putting together a preliminary array of alternatives. And we are looking at likely having a public engagement sometime in early November timeframe, where we can come out and talk to you about the results of the Future Without project, as well as the thoughts on what that array of alternatives to address the issues will look like, and get feedback on that. So just re-energizing this effort, but we should be making a lot of progress over the next 4 to 6 months as we move towards selecting a tentatively selected plan in June of next year, or May of next year, I think is our schedule to get to that tentatively selected plan milestone. All right, Shingle Creek, which Susan already talked about, but I think we're real excited about working with Osceola County on this project. And this is kind of an example of where the thinking on our projects, where we used to be trying to do these massive projects, kind of like BBC, which I think has 67 features in its tentatively selected plan, trying to focus more on incremental implementation, going after things that could provide more immediate impact, but also thinking about how do we lay out future work as well. So I think Shingle Creek is a really good example of how we're approaching that, really focusing on the primary infrastructure of the S61 structure, which is at the outlet of Lake Toho, which we think could provide a lot of benefit sooner. And then also, how can we go back and look at further work under that authority that we have. So it's a different way of looking at things, but hopefully it helps us expedite the studies and keep them at a lower cost and get to implementable features sooner. So again, we're really excited about this one, and great partner with Osceola County on this. Focused again on flood risk management, but as Susan also mentioned, also the health of Lake Toho. So there's an operational component which we think may be able to provide some additional benefits to the lake itself, in addition to the flood risk management benefits to the entire Shingle Creek Basin. I think this one we are looking at a selected plan in March of next year, so coming up pretty quickly. Another highlight on this one, because it's, at least for me, it was pretty amazing. We have to go through, any time we do a planning project, if it's going to exceed the smart planning paradigm requirements, which were 3 years, $3 million on the federal side, we have to go through a process called the using a vertical team alignment memorandum, or a VTAM, to request additional resources, whether that be money or time. And those typically take quite a bit of time to coordinate, especially on the bigger projects. But by keeping this one really focused, we were actually able to move through this VTAM process, have it approved at headquarters last week, which I think was, from my accounts, a record from getting to writing the VTAM to actually having it approved. And I think it was just under 3 months. So just want to highlight that the effort on this one from the team to get that expedited and approved really quickly. All right, finally, I'm going to end up with our operational planning efforts. So we can build things, which is great, but unless you know how to operate them and how they're all going to work together, you're missing out on a big piece of the puzzle. So operational planning, for anyone who is part of the LOSOM effort, knows how important that can be, and how challenging it can be to bring together all kinds of stakeholders, but also look at a larger system and figure out how to operate it in a successful manner. So we have actually 4 fairly large operational planning efforts ongoing right now as part of the some of our SERP work, as well as the Kissimmee River headwaters operations, which Nicole mentioned earlier. So the first one I'll highlight is the SEP Ops 1.0. So the Central Everglades Planning Project. There's a ton of ongoing construction, which is going to enable us to move water from the EAA, or the water conservation area, south to Florida Bay and to the southern Everglades. So that SEP project is really important. With construction finishing on some of those features, we have to understand how we're going to operate those. So SEP Ops is the first increment of SEP operations, which is currently under planning and is expected to be completed by 2027. So it's another pretty long effort. The team, I think, will have a draft water control plan and the associated NEPA that goes with that next year, which will entail kind of the water control operations, whether that be some regulation schedules or operational criteria that are part of all of these operational studies. A little bit different than our project planning studies that have a report, a feasibility type report, which outlines the project. The operational studies have a water control plan and NEPA that go with those. So SEP Ops making good progress. Lots of opportunities to still be involved in that. And again, this is the first increment of SEP operations, which will ultimately include the EAA reservoir. The Kissimmee Headwaters operational planning effort, which Nicole mentioned, we did approve and are currently under operations of the first increment of that as of August of last year. But this effort is really focused then on the full implementation of the Headwaters operations, which allows us to store more water in Lakes Kissimmee, Hatchinaha, Cypress to feed the restoration of the river downstream later into the dry season, more mimicking kind of the historical conditions where you would have had floodplain inundation well into the dry season. We've already seen some really good results from the restoration and construction itself, and then the operations is the piece that will really restore the hydrology to the system. So as we move forward with this, we look forward to seeing even better response from the ecology, not only in the river, but also in the headwaters lakes. The current stage we are in with Kissimmee Ops is alternative modeling. We are doing two types of modeling on the Kissimmee operations study: period of record modeling, which simulates a long-term period of record and allows us to see ecological benefits, and then flood event modeling, which kind of provides those assurances that we're not going to do any harm to the existing flood risk management benefits to the system. So both of those modeling efforts are ongoing right now and are expected to have results from those by the end of this calendar year. So you should see some meetings scheduled early next calendar year to start talking about results of the modeling on the Kissimmee Headwaters operations study. Again, the completion date for that one is fall of 2027. And then the final two operational planning efforts we have going on are related to a couple of our big reservoirs, the C44 and the C43. C44 was completed a couple years ago and is currently in the operational testing and monitoring phase. And the C43 reservoir, which the Water Management District is constructing, the ribbon cutting, as you may have heard, happened in July of this year. So a couple of big completions on those reservoir projects, which provide a lot of benefits, not only for really to the estuaries, but also to water supply. So those two operational planning efforts are ongoing to really understand how we're going to operate those reservoirs to maximize benefits, both for filling and releasing of water, trying to get the timing right on that, which is really crucial to the ecosystems in both of the eastern St. Lucie estuary as well as the Caloosahatchee estuary. Those efforts are kind of running in parallel. Some of the modeling will be done for both of those because they're both related to Lake Okeechobee. So the modeling that we did in LOSOM kind of informs the operations for C44 and C43. So it's important to model those together to really understand how they're impacting the overall system. We are looking at a July 2026 completion for the C44 operations study, which will have operational criteria and a regulation schedule for not only the C44 reservoir, but also the C23 discharge diversion canal, or also known as the interconnect, which will enable operation of both of those and to allow achievement of benefits early in the process. Again, for C44, it's part of the larger Indian River Lagoon South project, and incremental operational planning will be done, is being done for IRL. The first part of that is C44 and the interconnect. And then C43, that's operational planning effort is expected to be completed in spring of 2027, which again will have a water control plan that includes a regulation schedule for the reservoir as well as the operational criteria for the reservoir. In the interim, we'll begin operational testing and monitoring, I believe in the January timeframe for the C43 reservoir, which also includes the initial fill of the reservoir. And that's where it's kind of slowly, incrementally filled, so we can test it to make sure there are no concerns from an engineering perspective, and that we can safely operate it before we go into full operations. So that's why that one is a little bit further out for the full operational planning effort. And that completes my overview. Are there any questions on any of those efforts or any other ongoing core work?
Questions around the table? No? Okay, team.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think we're going to open up for the last item in the agenda. So going around and receiving updates from local, state, and tribal partners. I know you started, Susan. I don't know if you have anything else to add. And Dr. Lilu. You.
Susan already update on the Shingle Creek and the master plan. We have two running flood-wise modeling can real-time forecast the Shingle Creek and the Buena Vista Lake. So that one has been complete. So what's the update? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Amy, any update on your side?
Thank you. Tonight, I am having my last public presentation on our vulnerability assessment. So I went to about 14 meetings, have reached over 300 people, just educating our public on our vulnerability assessment, and it's going to be submitted this month to finish up those plans. We've also received our draft adaptation plan from our consultant, so we're probably going to start working on our public outreach for the adaptation plan starting in November. That plan will actually take areas that are vulnerable that were identified in the vulnerability assessment and come up with real projects to address those vulnerabilities. That plan is expected to be finished before March of next year. And then, what else do I have going on? Oh, we're going to start the first integrated watershed management plan for one of our basins to really dive into our real vulnerabilities into one of our vulnerable areas and identify bigger projects that not only look at flood control, water quality, and sea level rise.
Thank you. Let's make sure that we coordinate on those meetings with the LOS team to bring all your adaptation strategies as part of the models that they are running. Good, thank you very much. Hey, Elena, any updates?
Thank you. Thanks for having us and hosting another great meeting. So the city of Boynton Beach, we are also working on our adaptation plan. We're a little bit behind from Martin County, but we're working on the draft right now, hoping to have a draft in the next couple of months, and target deadline to complete that is March of 2026. So we're looking to identify priority projects that help with flood resilience and maybe some other factors like drought, water supply, saltwater intrusion. So I'm trying to expand a little bit to look at some of those issues and see how we can better adapt and mitigate some of those risks. We're also still working on updates to our original vulnerability assessment from 2021. We're hoping to go out to competitive solicitation in the fall, so that way we can have that project kicked off. That project is funded by the Resilient Florida program, and it needs to be completed by September of 2026. So we're moving right along on some of our planning. The city of Boynton Beach was also, it's not quite flood resilience, but we were a part of a project team that was awarded a $100,000 grant for heat resilience through the Climate Smart Communities Initiative. So we're going to be integrating some of the flood resilience and some of the other measures that we've taken from our vulnerability assessments to come up with an urban heat resilience strategy that's Boynton Beach specific. So it will include a lot of components of tree canopy, looking at some of the areas that do flood and maybe adding tree canopy to mitigate both issues. And we're also going to be looking at ways to build resilience in the community. And then we're just preparing for the new fiscal year that starts next month, trying to get our projects lined up and figuring out which direction we're going to go in.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Helena. Molly?
Thank you. Like most of the rest of the counties, we're finishing up our vulnerability study. Initially, our consultants noted quite a few areas of gaps that we have in data. So we are, 'tis the season to be granting. So we are reaching out for Resilient Florida grants, CBDGR grants, and we recently did get a $2.5 million state appropriations to help us with data gathering. So we're excited to get started on that. And I'm disappointed to hear from our group in Osceola that it does take a while to get all this information. I wanted it to happen overnight, but it doesn't seem like that's a thing. So we'll be undertaking the data gathering and see where this takes us to get to potentially do some projects. I was excited to hear about the high tide monitoring because, you know, Charlotte County has no elevation, and so it seems like a lot of our stormwater will be vulnerable to high tide and sea level rise. So we are going to use some of our state appropriations to begin water level monitoring throughout the county so we can determine which areas may need to be pump systems from now on, or, you know, what potential projects are out there. So we are just doing our baby steps, and I'm excited to hear what other counties are doing.
Excellent, great. And Tom?
Nothing to report, thank you.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I have just some events. So just going quickly through some last closing remarks. So dates for the Resilience Coordination Forum are up. We have the December meeting still in 2025, and those are the dates for the 2026 meetings. We're going to be sharing those on the website. And again, our survey for suggestions, recommendations is up again. Thank you for all the suggestions and comments that we have been receiving. Just some of the upcoming events. We are excited to be in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, in Punta Gorda for the two first events listed here. So the 4th Florida Resilience Conference from September 17 to 19, and the 2025 Southwest Florida Climate Summit. They're going to be a joint event, so 16 and 17, same location. A lot of very great speakers, and the agendas are really great. So yeah, just sharing with you here the links in case you're interested and have not yet registered. We also have the 17th Southeast Florida Climate Leadership Summit. It's actually here in Palm Beach County this year. So again, a very impressive program. They have announced the speakers and the agenda actually today. The email went out with all the panels and the agenda and the speakers. So if you haven't received, visit this website here. Again, a very great event, and coming up now in December here. Just on the same event that I was just sharing there, Jennifer Hacker provided some additional information. I'm very happy to share here. Just again, inviting you to register. Registration is $30. There is CU available. And again, she also has top scientists and experts on the panel, and it's open to the public with Q&A and also networking breaks. And final one here for today, we have the Water Institute Symposium. It's February next year, 24 to 26 in Gainesville, Florida. We have been working on some proposed sessions. We have a joint session with the Army Corps that was approved, pre-approved, really exciting one, and one on the metrics as well. And the abstracts are due on October 17. They have an open call for additional abstracts as well. With that, Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. Looking forward to the next forum meeting. Thank you.